Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Haven of Horrors. It's been a hot minute, but things happen. Um, we are down a player today, but that's all right. We've got our key players for this afternoon's game, and that's what matters. I'm Rue. I use they or he pronouns, and I will be your narrator today. And before we get into things, I'll let my players introduce themselves. Kestrel, would you like to go first?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Kestrel. I use these and theirs pronouns, and I'm going to be playing PbtA, who uses they, them, theirs pronouns.
Ro.
Hi, I'm Ro. I use they, them pronouns, and I'll be playing Alina, who uses her, she pronouns. In that order.
Like the chocolate?
Yeah.
And last but not least, Quinn.
Hello, I'm Quinn. I use they and she pronouns. I'll be playing Blair, who has never done anything wrong in their entire life, who is also using they, she pronouns.
Nothing wrong ever. This episode is going to be a little bit different structurally. We're not doing a case today because, as I will fill you in for anyone who didn't catch last episode, upon finishing or being ready to finish the case yesterday, Alina and Blair had a bit of a confrontation, and the two of them, or at least Alina, Blair is kind of always partially in their domain, but Alina has been sent into the Lonely, which is Blair's personal little zone. So instead of having a case like we usually would today, we'll be exploring that and seeing if Damien and PbtA can pull some strings on the outside to get them back. But for that purpose, we're going to have content warning. So this is a horror stream. This is a sort of and this particular aspect of it is going to be a lot more interpersonal horror, less of the gore and body horror and things like that. So content warnings for this episode will include some gaslighting, sensory deprivation, and isolation. And if any of those things are something that triggers you and something you need to step back from, please take those steps back and keep yourself safe. Your safety means the absolute most to us. So with that in mind, I will take us back to where we were, outside of the Historical Society Museum, where PbtA has just yeeted all of the haunted ball bearings into the mystery machine.
I believe I also set the building on fire.
You did also set the building on fire. Yes. You pulled the fire alarm
because
first.
I felt like I haven't set anything on fire lately.
Oh, the counters are not anymore. We have to remember for the next time we have the counters.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about the counters.
I also haven't killed anyone in a while.
You did set the building on fire. But we did make sure everyone got out first. I think you pulled the alarm, stole the ball bearings, and then set the fire in that order.
I think I set the fire before I grabbed the ball bearings because that was my reasoning for setting the building on fire, is I wanted to distract them.
That might be true. So you had just brought those out to the car to put them in the mystery machine so that hopefully no one else would touch them and become haunted by ball bearings. 1 second, sorry, typing.
That would be ideal.
And then went to go look for Alina and Blair, who had been investigating and talking to the curator of the museum. But you could not find them when you went out to the back little courtyard where you had seen them sort of head out towards. And you know that Alina had gone to, had sort of been feeling out where the center of power for this space was, and had been heading out towards it. But you do not see her. You don't see Alina. I don't know if they see Blair. That's up to Blair. But you don't see Alina. You also don't see Blair.
All right. Then I'm gonna head back to the mystery machine and inform Damien that we have 2 missing operatives. What the fuck are we called? Employees?
Research
Ghostbusters?
assistants,
Research assistants. There we go.
operatives is a really good word for them. Too cool for the jobs that you're supposed to do but don't actually do. Theoretically, you just file paperwork. It's just the fact that you don't file paperwork ever.
We don't have we have a lack of paperwork and abundance of bullshit.
Yeah, so you come back to the car and Damien is just sort of like in the process of like covering the ball bearings in as many like towels and blankets as there are in the mystery machine, just in case. And turns and just goes, we have 2 missing assistants.
Yep. I don't know where they are.
And a building on fire.
Yep.
They're not in the
is.
building on fire, right? We're sure
No.
about that? Okay.
Yes. We are sure about that.
Okay.
I'm still
Well.
trying to remember how the fuck to play PbtA.
Okay. Well, how do you feel about driving this car away, parking somewhere no one can see us, and then coming back?
Sounds like a plan.
Because feasibly, wherever they have been taken, we'll find evidence here. But I don't think they want us hanging around while the fire department stops the fire.
That's probably correct.
Okay. So Damien will drive to a different like neighborhood essentially and park the mystery machine, and then y'all can like walk your way back slowly so that you don't cross paths with any of the investigators that are there. In the meantime, while we walk over there, I'd like to take a step in and see what's happening, what's going on for Alina right now. So Alina, you've opened your eyes into a very foggy version of the space you were just in, without any of the people. So the people who had been in the courtyard, like eating their lunch and whatnot, are no longer here. And everything is sort of just laden with this grayscale fog. And you can hear voices, but they're very distant, very muffled. You can't really experience them. They're not like talking to you or anything. You are aware that talking is happening nearby and you can't quite make it out.
Lena sighs and just says out loud, it's like being back in England. And she starts walking.
Fair enough.
She will, I do remember the last time I said I'm heading, if I can, like through landmarks, guide my way to the cemetery, because
Yes.
I thought that maybe the resonance of the place would make it easier for me to cross over back into the real world.
Yeah. So you're heading towards the cemetery. Can you make me a general power roll?
Cool. I am alone, so I do have a +1.
You're not, is the thing.
Am I not alone?
You're not.
I mean, I would say that I have split from the group and I am doing something on my own without any allies present. So I don't know.
If the wording,
leave it to Rue.
Yeah, if I've forgotten my own game writing. Is the wording when you split from the group, or is the wording when you are alone?
The power says better alone. When you split from the group, take +1 forward on rolls. I don't
Then you can,
know
yeah.
what the spirit of that is.
Yeah, so you have split from the party. You may not be alone because you are in Blair's space, but you have been split off. So yes, you can take +1.
So yeah, that's 8 + 3.
11.
Thinking 11.
Okay, that's
That's-
a full success.
Big number.
It's a big number. That's a full success. So, I mean, it's not like walking normally, and the space is different here in that, like, you might be 20 miles from the cemetery. You're not. You're like 3 miles from the cemetery. This is not a big city. You're like 3 miles from the cemetery, but it's not going to be a 3-mile straight walk to get there, essentially, because of the way that this place works. And
I don't
it's
know
not.
what a mile is, but go on.
It's like 6 kilometers to the cemetery.
Okay. Oof. That's a big walk for an
Wait.
old lady.
Is a kilometer bigger than a mile or smaller than a mile? I've forgotten.
I'll check.
Because I know one of them is 2.2 times the other one. I just forget if it's kilometers bigger than miles or miles bigger than kilometers.
3 miles is, oh, no, it's almost 5 kilometers. Kilometers.
Okay, cool.
So still a big walk for a 90-plus-year-old
Yeah.
lady.
It's a rough walk normally, and you're
I'll
not.
take copious amount of stops so that I don't choke to death on my own asthma.
But yeah, so it is a slow walk for a variety of reasons. One, because like you can't quite get your footing here, you can't see the ground you're walking on. But you feel pretty confident that the direction you're walking will get you toward the cemetery. In that you can kind of feel your way around. This isn't like a total parallel of the universe that you normally exist in. But spaces with power do have their own like landmarks here. And so you're trying your best sort of to navigate your way towards that. And you feel like you're going the right way.
I assume it's similar to sort of the plane that ghosts exist on. So
Kinda.
I don't think Alina feels particularly out of her element here. I will remind you that I do not need to see with my eyes. I do have sort of like blind sense, and I will be paying attention to that because I assume the lonely will, the space will have a little bit of deceptive sensory input, to put it in a way. So I will try to rely more on my spatial awareness through
that
eye of darkness or whatever it's called.
Something I think it might actually be called like night blindness or something like that. I don't remember what they called.
Sightless sense.
Oh, because I didn't want to say blind sight because that's a D&D word.
You have my permission to use Eye of Darkness.
Eye of Darkness is really good. I think I'm going to keep that. Thank you. But yeah, so you're using that and less like looking. I will say it's not the same as when you were in the church and it was the theater, but the church was using it. When you were in the theater and it was total pitch black sensory deprivation. The sensory deprivation that you get here is less of a sight based and more of a sensation based. So like
sort of muffled.
So you can still see in the same way that like you can see on a foggy morning. But like you don't feel the same like connection to your limbs. You feel a little bit floaty and like a little bit like you're floating in your own body, almost like on the edge of what it feels like to be dissociated. Where like your body is walking and you are going this direction, but you don't feel the ground under your feet. You don't feel yourself moving in the way that you normally would. You don't smell and taste and hear the same like array of things you normally would. So it's just sort of everything is dulled. Your senses are all sort of muffled and dulled.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, you're wandering. You're not. Time doesn't work here in the same way that you're used to either. But you are walking toward the cemetery. You are making your way in that direction.
Yeah, I do it very calmly. I do not want to tire myself out.
And as you extend your senses out, I think occasionally you see a small bright light, very much like a cigarette, every now and then. And then through the fog, Blair's voice cuts through, completely clear. All around you, seemingly from nowhere. Darling, you know it's nothing personal, right?
I do not care.
You did ask for this.
Oh.
I'm simply obliging you.
And what is this now? Are you keeping me company?
Well, I am everywhere and nowhere here, aren't I? And you see
are
that cigarette.
currently very much more here than I expected you to be.
Well, it's your first time here. What kind of host would I be? Letting you wander around all by yourself. Which, to be clear, you are all by yourself, but you do prefer it that way, don't you?
Is this what we're doing? Are you trying to do your little bit of, what is it, psychoanalysis? I do think that's no longer thought of very much in a good light, right? Freud and stuff.
I prefer Jung personally, but
Sure. This is not my first time in a place like this.
I know.
So again, I'm asking you, what do you want? If you want to do the little act and try to get an emotional reaction out of me, other than mild annoyance, again, others have tried before, and even if I wanted to oblige you, I don't really think I can.
Oh, that's not what I'm looking for. I was more thinking an alliance of sorts is in order.
Okay, that's more productive, at least.
You see, there is I don't take issue with you, Alina. I take issue with your methodology. There is a way that we
I've
do
heard
things.
that before.
There is a way that we do things. And you are one of us, whether you want to admit it to yourself or not.
Oh, I know. I have no illusions of what I am.
And yet you do dabble with the others. You don't consider yourself beholden to death, and yet you are.
Death does not ask much.
You'd be surprised. What has it taken from you already?
Death hasn't taken much, really, from me. In fact, I would say, in a balance, it has given more than taken.
And what have you given it?
Food, I suppose, if that's a way. Fuel would make more sense, I guess, not rather than food. It is not an animal.
It
It's
is
a
in a
mechanism.
way.
It's a mechanism.
It has wants. Well, a want. And you certainly do keep it full. And yet you have found yourself here. You were touched by the lonely before I met you.
Yes.
Which is fascinating considering.
I think it's a little bit inevitable considering the kind of life I've led.
You've chosen to lead.
That depends on how much one believes in predestination, I guess.
And how much do you believe in predestination?
What do you care?
I care a great deal.
I'm again asking you, what do you want? You say an alliance, yet I don't see really the foundations for one in this conversation.
I know what you want.
What do I want? Enlighten me.
You want to weaken all of the others.
Do I?
And I know that the Institute lies to you.
Wow, that is such a revelation. Thank you. It's not like I haven't been working for that kind of people for a long time.
And you just see the cigarette sort of light up, much closer than it has been.
What are you proposing? If you want an alliance, I want to know, what are you offering? You are offering the alliance after all, not me.
Would you like to stay here or would you like to go back and finish your work?
I would very much like to go back and finish my work, but...
And what are you willing to do for that?
Very little. You have an inflated sense of maybe how much I have a self-preservation instinct. Do you think I go into the fray expecting to come back every time? I do come back every time, but I don't expect to. It's not a factor in what I do. So if you're trying to intimidate me with, oh, an eternity alone in this little hellscape of yours,
I wouldn't
I'm not
call her a
impressed.
hellscape per se. I quite like the quiet.
Fearscape, nightmarescape, call it what you want, your domain. Again, I'm not impressed.
And I think if I made MC, I would love it if a brick wall just kind of sprouted up in front of Alina.
Give me a power roll with +1 forward because you're in your space.
Excellent. So there was 2 6s.
What are you rolling? It sounds like metal.
No, it's just a
Regular
boy.
D6?
Yeah. So that's 12, 13, 16.
Yeah. A brick wall does appear. It looks however you want it to look, and it is as big as you'd like it to be because you rolled a 16, which is the highest you could possibly roll in my game.
Again, I've done nothing wrong ever in my entire life. I think it looks like it extends eternally upward and downward and to the sides. And it's like the same foggy material, but more opaque, I think. And then I think
like a gray brick, not a red brick.
Yes. And then Alina, I think you see Blair leaning against the wall, smoking a cigarette, 10 feet away from you, as agreed.
Nice wall.
Harani wants you dead.
Does she?
Yes.
It's nice to know that once employers notices the work we do.
And maybe I want Harani dead.
Good for you two. Do you want me to kill Harani? Is that what you're asking of me?
Oh no, that would be far too simple, darling. But I do think that you could be useful. And I think we could be useful to each other to these ends.
I haven't been, let's say, constructive to anything in a very long time, but if you do feel that we can reach some sort of agreement, do tell.
What would you ask of me to leave here?
Again, I don't find this place all that dreadful, really.
Would you like to stay?
You probably need me to leave to do whatever it is you want me to do. So that's not really an element, is it?
I can do what I need to be done without you.
I'm
But
sure you can.
I think it would be a much more interesting game to have someone else involved.
Why do you want Harani dead?
That's a very, very long answer.
I have time.
Do you?
Well, do I? You seem to be the master of this world I'm in, so that's up to you, really.
Master is a strong word, but you did use it, not me. Let's just say we've known each other for a very long time, and our ways may be diverging slightly.
Did Harani ask you to have me killed?
No,
that's
you would
probably too simple.
You would be dead by now if that was what had been asked of me.
If she wants me dead, then why am I still alive then?
Again, We do things in very particular ways.
Mm.
There's a sense of decorum, if you will, that you have been neglecting, that I personally take offense with, but adhering to the decorum gets you places much more quickly, even though it may not feel like it. This is part of the decorum, darling.
I do not like playing these games with your kind.
Well, then you are in the wrong business.
Hmm. Very well. Then you don't want me to kill Harani, but you do want her dead. So what do you propose that we might do to accelerate her demise? Hmm? And let's be clear here. I am in no rush to end Harani, but I would not object to the idea. I suspect that's why she wants me dead.
You know too much for their taste.
Oh, it's the burden of age.
Something like that, yes. It's lonely, isn't it, getting older?
I wouldn't know. I've been quite alone since I was very young.
And that's what I like about you, Alina. That's why we could be
I'm
good
used to
business
it.
partners. You continue doing your work, but perhaps with a guiding hand and a bit more decorum.
I will be honest, I do not think you want to be that guiding hand.
I didn't say it would necessarily be me.
I know, I'm just informing you.
And I appreciate the information.
I am not easy to manage.
Oh, I've noticed that already.
I do have one lingering question. You are tied to the Institute somewhat, right? That is more of a statement that requires clarification, not the question, as it were. Harani's death, would not that impact you negatively somewhat?
Harani's death would impact some people negatively.
But not you.
I suppose it depends on what you mean by negative.
Health-wise, let's say. I know it is an implied threat of working at the Institute, that one. That you can't leave, that you can't kill your boss or you will die. So
I believe most
I ask-
workplaces don't allow you to kill your employer, to be fair.
allow you? No, most places don't endorse it, but you can do it and leave. I have like previous experience with that. What I am saying is that most don't have a sort of curse put upon you as part of your contract.
Brownie's strings do reach quite far, don't they? But they don't necessarily reach here.
Fair enough.
And if you were to embrace your proper place with death, then who would you be to be stopped? The hand of death, even more so than you are already. I know you haven't had much luck with Laura.
I fail to see how she's relevant to this.
She sends her regards.
Noted.
And if you were an avatar of death properly, perhaps you could do something about her.
Are we done here?
Do we have an accord?
We have an understanding.
Would you like to be let out now, or would you like to wander a little bit more?
I have no feelings one way or the other.
That is unfortunate. And the wall and Blair just sort of melt away.
Alina resumes walking.
Well, Alina continues walking to the words cemetery. We're going to take an early break because we're ending earlier today. So we're going to take a break right here, and we'll be back about noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. So in about 10 minutes, we'll be back. And then we will finish the last half with Apia and Damien helping get Alina out of here. So we will see you very shortly. Hello and welcome back to today's episode of Haven of Horrors. For those of you who missed the time before the break, we had a very interesting conversation between Alina and Blair in The Lonely, where they negotiated some terms about how to continue working together. And then Blair left Alina to continue to wander towards the graveyard where she hopes to make her escape. We are going to take a moment to check in with PbtA and Damien, who have sneaked their way back to the Cultural Society, which is now mostly rubble. The fire has been put out and it's smoldering, but there's not really much of it left over there. PbtA, and I'm going to roll for Damien. I'd like you to make a tread carefully check for me.
Oh, good God. What modifier does that use?
Agile.
Okay. Okay, I got an 8.
Okay. Damien got a 5.
Brrr.
He's not really good at treading carefully. But that's okay. You just sort of watch as, like, in an attempt to like not make any noise, Damien sort of like hits like the corner of a curb with their cane and like trips and stumbles and like has to catch themselves and like twists their ankle a little bit. He's not doing super great, but he managed to keep quiet. He just kind of, slammed his ankle into the ground in the process. And then but yeah, so you're able to make your way over there. There's not really that many people around. Like there are still some like firefighter investigator folks who are like taking pictures and trying to see how the fire started so fast, but it's not like you used a like traditional accelerant. You just, lit a fire with your brain. So they can't really find any like traces of gasoline or like paint thinner or like the things that they're used to finding. So they're all just kind of like, well, guess it was an old building, and old buildings sure do burn easier than new ones. And so they're all just kind of taking pictures and not really paying attention to you as you sort of like make your way around. Are you like heading towards the back where the courtyard was?
Yes. We're just kind of heading back to where I saw Alina heading last.
Yeah. But yeah, so the courtyard's largely untouched by the fire, because it's like a cement courtyard with a fountain in the middle. So it's not like it's super flammable in the first place. Like it's scorched a little bit where the flames were, and there's like ash and stuff here, but it's pretty untouched otherwise. To sort of feel around for Alina and Blair or what might have taken them, can you give me a power roll, please? See if you can like vibe check for them, essentially.
That's a 7.
The 7, so it's a partial success. You can definitely feel that they both were here. And then that sense that you have of them is extremely dulled. Like normally when you're feeling around for someone, like you can feel them pretty strongly, even if they haven't been here for a while. But it's kind of like someone has put like cotton balls in your metaphorical ears. And you can't like hear or feel them to the same extent that you normally would. There's like a filter over it. But you know that they were here.
Okay. I'm gonna ask Damien if he can feel anything.
Yeah. Damien sort of looks around and sort of makes sure that no one is like approaching them. And then you sort of watch as Damien's eyes kind of like roll back into their head, and you can see the whites of their eyes. And you get the sense that they are not seeing the same space that you're seeing.
Yeah.
Damien rolled an 11. And so Damien's eyes sort of flip back to this white, and there's like almost a glow to them, like not quite, but you get the sense that if it were pitch black outside, their irises would like the whites of their eyes would probably be glowing.
Wig.
Gender. And then they roll back, and Damien's eyes are normally like right on the cusp between hazel and brown, but they are presently much more green than brown in that hazel, and that same sort of unpleasant eerie glow is definitely present in the irises as they look around. And he says, "They're not here anymore because they are a little above us, if that makes sense. In the fog, it's very hard for me to see in the fog. But they are in the fog." And like Damien's voice is also very distant, like it's still his voice, but like they're talking to you through kind of a weird, like almost like they're talking to you through glass. And Damien says, "She's gone further away. She's walking, going somewhere. I can't see her. But she's going somewhere."
PbtA like kind of looks around the courtyard. Is there a small space I can wedge myself into, like underneath something, like a bench?
There are benches you could get yourself under.
Okay, I'm gonna go like into the smallest possible space I can.
Okay.
And PbtA is going to say like, "Watch my body," and then like is going to curl up in the space and go into their headspace.
Okay. Damien will like twitch and flick back to like normal, and come and like they're going to sit on the bench that PbtA is curled up under to make it as unassuming as possible. And he's just kind of like set his jacket over the bench as well so that you're not visible from the outside.
Perfect. The darkness helps.
Yeah. And then
So,
you are free to enter your headspace.
What PbtA's headspace looks like is it's like under an underpass, but specifically tucked up really deep underneath, like almost in a cave. Like there has been a little bit of erosion and there's like a space in there, and you can hear like the rumble of cars above. And Vale like blinks awake and is like they're looking at Belladonna, and they kind of, Vale says, "We're going to need to go deeper again." And Belladonna cracks her knuckles and says, "I've been waiting for this for so long. I don't get to come out very often." And so they're going to link hands and walk out of the cave. And what they're trying to do is a similar thing they did to the spiral, and they're going to try and walk into Blair's headspace.
Would you make a whatever is higher thought or power roll for me?
Okay, they're even.
Okay.
Okay. That is an 11.
Okay, a full success. So you sort of the two of them step out of the cave. Are Vale and Belladonna walking like side by side?
Yeah, they're holding hands.
Cool.
They don't want to
so-
let go of each other while they do this in case they end up in different places.
Very smart. So the two of you sort of walk out of the mouth of the cave and into a fog world.
Oh, I haven't done this in a while. I should describe what Vale and Belladonna
Oh,
look
yeah.
like.
Yes.
So
please do that.
Vale
I'm gonna
is
go under my desk
slightly-
and get my dice.
Yeah, Vale is slightly taller than Belladonna. Belladonna is wearing like a long dress that kind of floofs out at the bottom. It's mostly black, and then it has like almost like lace around the collar and like belled sleeves that cinch around her elbows, and very long, like fluffy and wavy brown hair. And Valerian has very like spiky and curly red hair, and very pale skin and blue eyes. And Belladonna has mostly just like normal Caucasian complexion with almost black brown eyes. And Valerian also has a lot of freckles. So, and is wearing kind of something similar to Apia. They're wearing like a long coat and a t-shirt and jeans.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so you step from your cave into the fog world, essentially. And does Belladonna and Valerian don't often exit the cave of the headspace, right?
No, usually they just like project out into the world, and that's how Apia is.
Yeah.
They don't normally leave the cave unless they have, like when they went to the spiral, they left the cave.
Yeah. So it would be hard to say that it is different or similar to what they're used to because they're not used to going out into this space.
Mhm.
But with some degree of familiarity, both of them can tell that this is like the normal projected outside space that perhaps they would be able to enter, just sort of covered in a thick layer of very sensory depriving fog. It's very not even cold, but like cold in the way where when you can't feel anything, it feels cold.
Yeah.
And very like dulled and sort of distant, even if you like add like even in your own body, a little bit distant and strange. But from here, you can sort of see a bit more of the landscape than Alina can see. And so you don't get like the full map, which Blair would have,
Mhm.
but you can see a little bit more of the landscape, and you can see that it is almost a like mirror image, not mirror image, but like a superimposition of the world that you live in. But like some buildings are starker outlined than others, and some of the places kind of mesh together into an indistinct series of city blocks, things that aren't as important, things that don't have as much value, sort of meshed together into an indistinct suburban blankness. And then occasional buildings and areas have a little bit more structure to them.
So we're trying to find Alina.
Yeah.
They don't really care about finding Blair because Blair is everywhere. We're looking for Alina.
Yeah.
The only other solid person in this place.
Alina is not the only other solid person in this place.
Blair doesn't count because she is this place.
Yeah. Still. There are
That's not great. There's somebody else trapped in here.
there are others stuck in this place.
All right. Well, anyway, we're looking specifically for Alina.
Yeah. Give me another power roll.
That's an 8.
An 8, a partial success. You are able to determine that Alina is here. And you can sort of feel her like blipping on the edge of your consciousness. It keeps sort of fading in and out behind the fog, but you can get a pretty good general idea of the direction that she's in. You can't get like a pinpointed location, but you know that she is, I'm gonna say east. She's east of you on this imaginary map that I don't have.
Okay. I'm kind of wondering how Blair is feeling about this nonsense.
For Blair, would you like me to describe how this kind of feels when this happens for you?
Yes, that would be great.
So you're sort of a little bit smug, gloating in your perceived successful negotiation, and a little bit of maybe intimidation, you think, for Alina, and some new accords you have reached, theoretically. And so you've sort of settled back comfortably into the being and not being that is in your space. You are not necessarily any one place, but you're everywhere and nowhere all at once. And sort of on the edge of your awareness, almost like when the hairs stand up on the back of your neck, if Blair has ever experienced that. I'm not sure that happens to Blair very often. But if Blair has ever felt the hairs stand up on the back of her neck, sort of like that sensation where something is wrong, something is different. And what it almost feels like is your fog is almost like a white noisy kind of static, yeah? This is a different kind of static. This is the kind of static that comes when a couple of wires are crossed or something is glitching in the code that's been created. It's a colorful sort of static. It's a much more like broken filament static than a crossed connection static. And it sort of like flicks into your awareness and then sort of carves a little space out for itself. And you can feel it sort of feeling out with little static feelers.
Do I recognize it?
Make a thought or power roll.
Well,
Whatever
golly,
is
I wonder which
better.
one it'll be. 13.
Jesus. I forgot you have a +3 to power, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't really cross paths with APA's entity all that often. It doesn't really jive with your plans for life. But you are familiar with this sort of like tech glitchy sensation, and you know that it is associated with the stranger. And the only person who is stranger coded that you've interacted with recently is Apia. So it's safe to assume that you could figure out who it would be.
Noted.
Do you do anything? Or is Blair just gonna kind of watch?
I think Blair just kind of wants to see how this plays out.
Okay. Are you going to make your way toward where you felt Alina? Sorry, are Vale and Belladonna going to make their way towards where they feel Alina?
Oh, yeah, they are.
With the like sort of vague knowledge that you have, it'll take you a little bit longer than like if you knew exactly where she was. But you begin walking forward in the fog and sort of like holding on to that tendril that you have reached out to Alina with, to kind of focus you against the fog that like waves over your perception. And every once in a while, you'll see a figure in the fog that looks like it could be Alina.
Cool.
But no matter how fast you walk, you can never get closer to those figures. And if you call out to them, they don't seem to hear you.
Well, that's not great. I'm gonna have to track down Blair, I guess. Ugh. They do not really want to do that.
Ugh.
I'm sorry.
Ugh is a very strong vibe.
That's like the is specifically from Valerian, who's too tired for this shit. Belladonna is very excited. Basically they have like a silent conversation, which is basically an argument where Valerian is like, no, we just need to continue trying to find Alina, and Belladonna is like, no, we absolutely need to find Blair because I want to at least try to kick her ass. So yeah, we're gonna go find Blair. Blair, does Blair know that Apia is two people?
I don't think so.
I can't. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is gonna be something.
I don't think Blair knows that Apia is the front of Valerian and Belladonna's system.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think the rest of the team does, but Blair hasn't been around long enough to be trusted with that information.
Blair's new in town.
I think I met one, but not all, or am I misremembering?
I think the only person who has like talked to both of them and met and like interacted with them at large is Maria, but I think everyone has like met, the rest of them have met one or the other.
Yeah, I think I met Valerian.
Yeah.
Yeah. Belladonna doesn't come out as often because they're very different, and Apia tries to keep as low of a profile as possible about this. Basically, the more chaotic that Apia is being, the more likely that it is that it's Belladonna.
Right.
But yeah, so you're gonna look for Blair instead of Alina?
Yeah, basically.
Okay. Roll me a power roll. Blair, if you don't want Apia to find you, roll an opposed power roll.
I got a 10.
Nice.
$11.
You reach out in the same way that you're reaching out to Alina, and you almost feel like you could sense Blair, and then this like overwhelming sense of detachment sort of washes back over you instead. And instead of being able to reach out,
this is really funny because Valerian and Belladonna are a personification of dissociation.
yeah. And like you sort of like, as you try to reach out to that, neither Belladonna nor Vale can get a grasp on where Blair is. And part of that is because presently Blair is everywhere and nowhere. She isn't existing in one space. They have sort of dispersed themselves into this fog. And so like you are aware that the fog in front of you is Blair, but it also isn't Blair.
Belladonna cups her hands and yells, Blair! Where are you? And Valerian looks somehow 6% more tired.
There is a moment where you think that should echo because of how open the space you're in is, but the sound falls unpleasantly flat. It doesn't bounce back to you. It doesn't seem to bounce off any walls or the ground. You hear it right in front of you, and then you can tell that it fades out within a matter of feet. Sorry, I bonked into my microphone. Probably wouldn't sound great.
Bonk.
And then I think they would hear around them, coming from everywhere and also nowhere. It's not very polite to enter without knocking. No, is it?
Valerian says, you left the door open.
My point stands.
Belladonna says, maybe we're not interested in being polite.
No, I suppose not. Can I help you with something?
Belladonna like kind of thinks for a second and then says, I think a friend of ours came over and they haven't come home yet and we're a little worried about them.
That does tend to happen. I'm sure your friend is just fine. But you're welcome to stay if you want.
Then it shouldn't be a problem if you could direct us to them.
Oh, you know, so many people come in and out. I lose track.
Belladonna says, no, you don't.
I rather like games. I think it'd be more fun to watch.
Valerian says, let's see, how do I want to put this? What's the point of being a chess master? And then Belladonna finishes the sentence, if the pieces don't have rules.
Who said we were playing chess?
And then Belladonna says, God, you're pretentious.
I know. It's part of my charm.
Belladonna says, there's more to charm than being annoying.
Perhaps when we all settle this, you can show me a thing or two about being charming.
I'd love that.
Do you need a hand?
Vale says, well, since I'm pretty sure you're keeping us away from Alina.
Not actively.
Whether we do it actively or passively, we're still doing it.
I can't help what is in my nature. I'm sure you can understand that.
They say at the same time, what is nature and what is nurture? But one of them says it backwards.
God, I wish I could do the thing where you layer voices. If only I was doing this in post-production.
Huh.
And Valerian says it almost like sadly, but Belladonna says it like with a very wide smile.
Good.
You're fascinating. You know it.
Belladonna says, medically or otherwise.
Otherwise,
Sorry, I haven't gotten to play Belladonna that much yet, and this is really fun. Belladonna says, I don't find you very interesting.
and what do you find me?
You know when you're walking and you accidentally step on a snail and it's inconvenient? Because then you have all the snail parts all over your shoes, and then you have to clean your shoes, and sometimes it doesn't come out. And there's snails everywhere because there's just been a lightning storm. And snails are always drawn to interesting weather phenomena. It's like that. And then Valerian says, in answer to your question, we found you.
And I don't think you get any more responses.
All right, they're gonna go back to trying to find Alina.
Okay. Make another power roll for me.
That is another 10.
Okay.
One of my dice is really carrying this round.
Thanks, that one die. You sort of like reach out again, perhaps a little bit fueled by the interaction you just had with Blair and the like bit of distaste you might be feeling afterwards. And you reach out and sort of like brush up against what you recognize to be Alina. And from that proper, yeah, yes,
I feel that.
yes, this time you do. Because they actually managed to reach you. You feel that sort of like weird, like tingly, staticky sensation. You probably felt it before when PbtA has used their powers around you.
Okay, I'm going to sit down because I've been walking a lot, and I will try to astrally project back in their direction.
Okay. I don't think you normally have to roll to astrally project.
Let me check.
But if whether you do or don't, you will have to here.
Yeah, I don't normally have to, but
Yeah.
I suppose I will now.
Yes.
That's numbers 12.
Oh, okay. It was this is
Rolling.
determining sort of the clarity
It's
of the
power, right?
Yes, it's power.
Yeah.
This is determining the clarity essentially of your astral projection.
Yeah, I
but
don't know
you
if my astral form will be like even visible here.
Yeah, you are not visible in the way that you normally are because that astral form that you take that exists in the not ethereal plane, the ghost plane for ghosts, is normally only visible in that space, and you're not really in that space. You're in a different one, but you are able to like project yourself out further, and because of what you're doing, the muting effect of the fog is not quite so strong on your astral self as it is on your physical / not physical self. because the entities are places, it's kind of hard to describe your physical body, but your physical body is here. It's just also not. But you are able to astrally project, and you can speak toward Valerian and Belladonna, and they will be able to hear you as more than the mutterings they're hearing from everyone else. They won't like it'll be like distant, like you will hear it very distantly, but you will be able to hear Alina when she talks.
Do I see them?
You cannot see them from where you are.
Okay.
Like you can feel which direction they're in, and you can feel sort of their like energy, but you can't see them.
I will just say then the cemetery. Just like a muttering of the cemetery. And then snap back and continue on my way.
Continue walking.
All right. They get the message, I guess, and start, heading towards the cemetery.
Yep. You're further behind Alina from the air distance that you are. So it will take you longer to get there. But you can also begin making your way toward the cemetery.
Cool.
Question.
Yeah.
Can I move the cemetery?
You cannot move the cemetery. It is one of the grounded, belongs to another entity spaces.
Can
So,
I obfuscate the way there?
You can make it harder to get there. Like you can put the chunks of plain suburbia in between and make it like harder to navigate to the cemetery, but you cannot move the cemetery itself.
Okay. I would like to try to do that.
Okay, make a power roll.
$12.
Okay. It is definitely going to slow both of them down. Like they do both know where the cemetery is at this point, but it's going to take more turns of street corners that you're not used to having to take to get to the cemetery to get there. So
Valerian and Belladonna are not opposed to going through a fog house to get where they want to go.
Okay.
They will walk right the fuck through somebody's living room.
Okay. I'm very so yeah, you go ahead and you open a door to a fog house. I'm going to ask Quinn if you want to describe the fog house or if you want me to do it.
How about you do it?
Okay. You open the door to this fog house. All the houses here, they're not all identical, but they're all sort of the same kind of boring drab. This used to be an old-fashioned town, and then suburbia happened in the 50s, and we built a bunch of the houses that are essentially the same, with the same basic structure and the same like layout. And you walk in the front door, and it is even foggier and harder to see inside of the house. And you see sort of like figures in the fog. Sort of there is a person in the kitchen, and there is a person sitting on the couch, and there is like a phantom television on essentially. And that there is not like TV playing, but you can see that there is like a television with like light here. And there is one person sitting and watching the television. They're not like a full person. They're very much like a shade of a person. Another person working in the kitchen, and then sort of at a third disparate table, there is a shaded figure sort of sitting and working. And like the fog between these figures is extremely thick.
All right, so they're gonna exit out the back door and probably not do that again.
Yep, you walk back out, and the people who were in there didn't even notice you had come through.
Cool, that's what they thought would probably happen.
Can I roll thought to navigate the sort of maze better?
Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
And I am still alone.
Alone.
So I do get a +1. That's 9.
Partial success. So you know that the streets have been moved. Like you can tell that much that essentially Blair has added more blocks between you and the cemetery than there used to be. And so you sort of start like thinking about shortcuts that can get you there. And it's a little bit draining. It leaves you a little bit winded because you have to keep crossing through yards and like not into houses, but like cutting corners and things. So it's a little bit draining. It leaves you feeling a little bit tired, but you are getting closer to the cemetery.
Cool.
And eventually, you're not entirely sure again of how long it's been because time is a little strange in here. You reach the wrought iron gates of the cemetery. The cemetery looks a little bit more clarified than your average place here. It's still covered in fog. Like it is still very much the cemetery, but in Blair's house. But you can see the outlines of graves. And there are more of those shade figures here. All of them still cannot see each other, cannot reach out to comfort each other. There are just shades upon shades here, sitting at graves that probably don't even belong to their loved ones. But they are here because this is where those who have been left abandoned and alone by death linger.
Okay. I will wait for a bit, knowing that Elena thinks that PbtA is here. So Elena will wait for that, basically.
To get
Given that
wait for
she-
Valerian and Belladonna to get here.
Right.
Mhm.
She will be kind of surprised because Elena
You've never
doesn't know
seen their
them.
headspace forms.
Right. Like, no, again, Alina knows Valerian, but hasn't seen sort of Valerian's face. So it will be kind of like, do I know you?
Yeah. Valerian says, we're PbtA.
Oh, yes, we've spoken before, I think.
Yes, my name's Valerian, and that's Belladonna. Belladonna looks mildly peeved.
Have you been sent here to get me?
Sort of, Belladonna says. We're hoping we can get you out.
Do you have an idea of how to do that?
Well, we'll probably have to go back to the cave. It's the entrance to our headspace. It's how we brought, and then Valerian continues, that guy out of that person out of the spiral.
Right.
We assumed this would be a similar principle, and it seems like it is. Although I don't know that Blair will let us. So we're going to need to figure out that part of it.
Well, I had parts of a plan of how to get back, but I do hope we don't have to walk all the way back to where you entered this place. I have walked too much today.
Belladonna says, well, we kind of walked in a roundabout way to get to you, so the crow flies way is probably faster to get back.
Anyway, this seems more solid of a place. I will see if I can exert some influence over it. If that's okay with you. I don't know if crossing through here would help you.
Valerian says technically our headspace location isn't even in this town, so theoretically we could find it under an underpass.
Interesting. We'll see if it works. Alina will try to replicate a process similar to what she did on the cemetery with the whole ghost thing, like sort of the gate she opened back then. She will try to replicate that.
Okay.
In a way.
Yeah. Make a power roll for me.
Power, that would be 13.
Jesus Christ. No,
I'm
none of you
rolling
have,
really well.
none of you failed a single roll today. No experience for anyone.
It's amazing because I usually roll really bad. I'm like infamously unlucky. I always say that's why I am always the one who runs the game, except in this game.
Yeah, so you sort of like walk amidst the shades that are here. And you know from your time that you can't help them. Like, these are not even necessarily people. Like, these are, some of them might have once been people that have been trapped here for a long time. But some of them are just sort of like atmospheric elements that come with this space, a reminder of isolation and loneliness. And so you know better than to stop and necessarily try to reach out to these people. So you find a space in the cemetery that's a little bit emptier, has a little bit fewer of these shades. And you sort of like settle into the feeling of being in a cemetery and the feeling of being more grounded than you have been in this space, because even in this other plane that is under the control of another entity, death still has power in the same way that on the horizon you can see the Institute and the eye still has power. That sort of sense of like they're intertwined and they can't separate themselves from it. And you're able to sort of reach into the soil and feel it in a way that you haven't been able to feel things before. And you're fairly certain that you could get back from here.
Try that.
Okay. Are you bringing Valerian and Belladonna with you, or are Valerian and Belladonna going to take their headspace door back?
However they so choose. I will tell them. I think I can get myself back. I don't know what will happen to you. It's not like there's a body waiting for you on the other side here, but you might snap back like a rubber band, or you can take the long way home. I leave that up to you.
I think we're going to go back through our headspace. We wouldn't want to get scrambled.
As you wish.
Putting themselves back into PbtA is a process.
But yeah, so you are.
Pleasure to meet you both.
You as well. That's Belladonna. And Valerian just sort of nods.
You sort of like settle in again to that space and grab onto the place within you where your entity lives and your connection to that entity lives, and sort of like let yourself fall into it. And you close your eyes and sensation sort of comes back to you in a rush. And you find yourself standing in the cemetery in front of an eroded grave, a grave that has long since been abandoned. Whoever used to keep it up is not here to do that anymore.
I'm back in color.
Back in color.
Alina will look around. Is it daytime?
Yeah, it's still daytime. Time moves, I feel, a lot slower, or rather, it moves slower in the real world than in the lonely. So like you may have been in the lonely for what felt like hours or like a long time, but it's probably only been maybe an hour and a half since you were taken in.
Okay. Alina will try to like wave at someone because she's barely able to speak at this point.
There are people here visiting their loved ones. Someone will come over and just like, are you okay? Do you need me to call someone?
Taxi.
Okay, yeah, I can call you an Uber. That's fine. It's okay. They like get out their phone and they like order you an Uber. Where are you going? What address?
I will tell them the
The
address of the institute.
Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, they'll be here in like 10 minutes. Just wait by the entrance. They can't come like into the cemetery, obviously.
It's not what was that game? Crazy Taxi?
Do you need help getting there? Like I could walk you to the street if you.
I just wave like very
Okay.
authoritatively and just walk out.
Okay, gotcha. Have a good day, ma'am.
And I will go back to the institute. Once there, I will put on my sort of backup oxygen tank because the other one
Yeah.
is in the
In the
van.
car. Yeah.
I will get out my tablet and I will send instant message to Damien saying like, I'm at the institute, I'm fine.
Fuck. Maybe. I don't. Sorry. 1 second. Wonk. But yeah, you get like, there's like a moment, and then Damien is like sends you a thumbs up emoji, and then fill me in when I get there? Question mark. And then is Blair with you? And another question mark.
Sure, and not presently, but I assure you she's unharmed.
Okay. The emoji that's like the kind of like concerned face. I'll wait. I'm here with APO. Once they get up, I will meet you back at the institute. But yeah, so that and then Valerian and Belladonna, you're going to walk back to your headspace, yeah?
Yeah. Technically, the underpass cave is not in the city, it's in their hometown.
Yeah.
So they're kind of just looking for an underpass that kind of fits the same description.
Okay. Yeah. You can make me a thought or power roll.
All right. Get back over here. That's another 10.
Nice. Yeah, so like sort of like through the fog, and from the cemetery, the fog is a little bit clearer. It's not your space necessarily, but it's not a space entirely owned by the lonely. So you have a little bit more clarity. And you can see that not too far off, there's a highway overpass you could absolutely get to and use as an entryway.
Cool. We're gonna go through there.
Cool. You have no trouble getting back. Nothing stops you. Nothing gets in your way.
All right. Valerian is gonna take a fat nap, and it's Belladonna who wakes up.
I thought you were gonna say that Valerian was gonna take a fat hit off a bong. And I was like, good for him.
We've come full circle. Anyway, so Belladonna like comes out from underneath the bench, like emerges, stretches, and then dusts off their clothes a little bit, which doesn't do a lot because AP is always covered in a fair amount of dust.
And Damien will like see her crawl out and say, "Oh, so Alina texted me. She's back at the Institute. She's made it safe. Are you okay?"
Yeah, we're fine.
Okay. I guess you can fill me in on the way there, or you can not if you're not comfortable telling me about it. That's also fine.
Oh no, absolutely. Blair is terrible. She took Alina, and generally is a bitch.
I will note that in her evaluation, if they ever have one. I'm
I
sorry
think
that
she's creating an unsafe work environment.
you know.
Which is nothing that we normally have here.
Yeah, Damien just, I'm not sure our work ever creates a safe work environment, but I will talk to them about not kidnapping your coworkers. Seems like a bad way to build office rapport. I'm sorry.
Thank you. All right, let's get back to the Institute.
Yeah, let's get back to the Institute. Damien will, still ankle hurty from having jammed their foot with their cane, walk back to the car and drive you all back to the Institute. And then you can all, so the three of you sort of are back in the office. And if Alina is willing, Damien would like to take down notes of everything that happened while she was in the Lonely, or at least everything she's willing to tell him. Like you don't have to tell him about the like talk that you had with Blair, but like he wants to know what it's like in the Lonely, essentially. They want to know about how it felt and how you got out and stuff like that.
Yeah, I will give some information on that. I'll explain my process on how I got out, but I will add the caveat for the report that I do think not necessarily that it could have been made impossible if Blair wished it so, but it could have been made harder to accomplish. So that should be noted.
Okay.
Alina will say that she does not think Blair's intention was to kill her.
That's good. I'm glad that they weren't trying to kill you. They're still not back yet, so I assume they're...
They probably are. You just can't see them.
There's a moment where Damien sort of like, that same thing happens where their eyes roll back, and he tries to see if Blair is in his office. And she's not, as far as they can tell. He just sighs and says, well, I guess I will talk to them when she gets back about this and about how we should treat each other if we're going to work together.
Yes. How did the house thing go?
There's nothing left of it, and the haunted ball bearings are in the artifact storage.
Oh,
I think everyone got out safe, and like they'll look over at PbtA.
Yeah, as far as we know.
no pun intended, but do try to keep an eye on those ball bearings. I don't think Harani would have sent us there if they didn't expect us to destroy that place. It was too volatile, so to speak. So it might be something.
Something more.
Yeah, there is something at work here. I just don't know what role the Institute is playing on it.
I will keep my eyes open. All of them.
Good.
Does anyone have anything they would like to do before I switch gears to a quick scene?
I'm fine.
Kestrel, are you good?
Nope, I think we're good.
Okay. 13 floors up on the top floor of the Institute. Harani is sitting at their desk. The computer screens and monitors around their desk are all on. Anytime any of you have been in her office, only a couple of them have been on or none of them have been on. And on their like computer, like where their desk is, the main screen is like an Excel spreadsheet, some work. But every other screen is linked to a CCTV camera. And they are just flickering between scenes everywhere in the city. You knew already that she had cameras in a lot of the buildings of the office, in a lot of the rooms of the office. But it appears, again, none of you are seeing this. This is just for flavor. They have cameras linked to, like they have screens linked to all of the CCTV cameras in the city, and are just sort of flicking through them and like taking notes down of things that are happening.
And then Blair appears sitting on their desk.
If I knew you were coming, I would have made more space.
I didn't know I was coming, and they pull out a cigarette, and without a light, they just sort of like it ignites itself when they put it in their mouth. And she just kind of flicks ash disdainfully across Harani's desk. You didn't tell me that your archivist was the incompetent one. Your intel was bad.
I don't consider my archivists to be incompetent. I consider them to be unmotivated.
And undernourished.
It happens sometimes when there are rivals in the house, so to speak. But I don't think that will be a problem for much longer.
Those other two are bullshit, and you know it. This was a rigged game from the beginning. And you know I don't take kindly to that.
No, you like the sense of decorum.
As do you.
Most of the time. I thought we were agreed that some of our practices are a little archaic.
Obviously, considering what I've been up to for the past however many years. But there are certain practices that we keep, dearest. Otherwise, you should have included that in your terms when we made the bet.
I suppose I was a little less transparent, but then my contracts never are transparent. You don't like it when things are too clear.
They put the cigarette out on whatever paperwork is on their desk and just my cover's blown.
You did that to yourself. I did
Because
not
I
tell
thought-
you to take that.
Because I didn't think they could do it themselves, because you told me that they weren't ready for this.
As far as I was aware, she wasn't. But like I said, there have been blind spots in my vision lately.
You might want to get them checked out.
Yes, I'm working on that, thank you. Besides, it is not entirely a loss. You have learned something very important, have you not?
Oh, I've learned several things, but I don't know how I'm supposed to go back to them now that they are completely aware.
They are aware of what you can do, not of why you do it or of what your intentions are.
Correct, and none of them stand a threat to my personal pet project, but they do stand more threats than I was willing to take on at the beginning. And we didn't sign anything, you'll remember.
Oh, of course not. We never do. And she sort of like flicks a button on the desk and switches the camera to the one in Damien's office and then turns the sound on. As you hear as Elena is giving her deposition essentially about the lonely, and closes with the statement that she doesn't think Blair was doing this to kill her, and she doesn't, and that they reached an agreement, and that Elena believes that Blair could have made it much more difficult for her to get out and chose not to.
Which is not untrue.
Precisely. But that is not the point of why I showed you that. I showed you that to say that despite your acting out, Alina does not believe you are an active threat. Which is less than can be said about how she feels about Vivian.
Which one is Vivian? I don't think I've even met Vivian.
No, and I'm not sure you will. Vivian is she has been consumed recently with a project I put her on.
Another one of yours.
Indeed.
Pity for her then.
Ah, well. Like I said, what I've set her on will either change the aspects of the office if she is to pass the test, or it will bring her closer to me and further from herself. I could always use more eyes.
I think I'd like to change some of the conditions of the bet.
I suppose, given the circumstances, I do allow you some room for negotiation.
I think you allow me more than that. Oh, rather.
We can talk about owing. I'm listening.
I think I'm going to accelerate things with the ritual.
Fair.
If I pull it off and they don't stop me, well, you have the terms of my win condition.
Of course.
And what about your end goal?
I was happy with my original terms, but if we're going to renegotiate, if they figure out what you're doing before you can put that ritual in motion, then I think I've won. You've given them the hints they need, but they have not taken the time to see them yet.
That's true.
So it's all on you in terms of how ready you are to activate that ritual, or if you need a little bit more time for your algorithm.
We're still in for dinner at 7.
Of course, I've made reservations. Would you cancel on them?
I am still mad at you.
Oh, I know. But if I am eating dinner alone, it is still fancy dinner.
You can make it up to me afterwards.
Certainly. Now, if you don't mind, there is something fascinating happening downtown.
And Blair just sort of fades back into the fog.
Now Ronnie goes back to her work, watching everything. And I think that's where we're going to call it for today. So thank you all very much for joining us for this episode of Haven of Horrors. I'm going to let everyone do their outros so we can head off. So in reverse order, Quinn.
Hello, I am Quinn, and I have never done anything wrong in my entire life. You can find me on Twitter at Quintastic_. I do lots of things, TM. You can catch me tonight at
Is it 5?
5 Pacific? Yes, 5 Pacific on Transplanar for the Hounds of Mercy. It's gonna be an episode. And I do other stuff. Follow me on Twitter, buy my games. Cool.
Ro.
Hey, I'm Ro. You can follow me on Twitter at Ro_Violich, and I do not do many things, but there is a comic that has been on hiatus for a while. I'm the writer of it, and my partner illustrates it. You can follow that on Twitter at Of Dwarfs and Men, or you can just go to the site of the comic, which is rlefcomics.com. And we will eventually get back to it, but there has been complications.
Castro.
Hi, I'm Kestrel. I use these theirs pronouns, and I've been playing PbtA, who uses they, them, theirs pronouns, who is made of Valerian, who uses he, him pronouns, and Belladonna, who uses she, her pronouns. You can find me on Twitter at Vaporwave Nashira without the E, because Twitter is homophobic. I also have an art Twitter, which is Azelfaphage Arts. Take your best guess on how to pronounce that, or you can look at my pinned tweet on my main Twitter. That is easier to spell.
And I'm Rue, and I've been your narrator this afternoon. I use they or he pronouns, and chiefly I play Damien, who also uses they or he pronouns, and Harani, who uses they or she pronouns. You can find me on Twitter as at Ilana Knight 13 and everywhere else as Ilana Knight without the 13, because I made a Twitter at 12, lost the password, and Twitter will not give it back to me. It's been 12 goddamn years. On Sundays, you can catch me on Nerds with Dice, playing a goth clown vampire in our Vampire Masquerade game. And aside from that, mostly you can keep up with me on Twitter in terms of projects that I'm in. Podcasts that I'm in are nominated for the Audioverse Awards. Same with Quinn. So if you are feeling like voting for those, you can check my Twitter and maybe vote for the podcast that I'm in. It would make me happy. But other than that, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Alls for running our text today. Tech, not texts, whatever. For running our tech today. Without her, we would not be able to be here. And also thank you to Heroes Without Limits for hosting. For those of you who are new here, maybe Heroes Without Limits is a tabletop channel and community devoted entirely to disabled, neurodivergent, and chronically ill individuals. And we have a fun Discord that you can be in and things like that. And also a thank you to Liquid Rena on Twitter, who made all the assets you've seen for our game today. So if you're looking for stream assets, I think they are accepting commissions right now. And we will catch you same spooky time, same spooky place, 2 weeks from today, which is November 2nd, maybe?
Second. Yes.
Woo! So we'll see you on November 2nd, where we will be going back to a little bit more of a standard procedure with a case for them to solve. Thank you all for coming.
Bye.